he did, but she was way beyond him in terms of he was cast your buckets down where you are in the South, in the rural South. She thought we can do trade education as hairdressers in urban areas. She adapted some of those ideas of education. With W.E.B. Du Bois, she was very supportive of the NAACP and the anti-lynching movement, and was very much on the same page with him. Actually had intended for her house, Villa Lawaro, to go to the NAACP after her daughter's death. But the taxes were too high, and that didn't happen. But she interacted with both, as well as Monroe Trotter and A. Philip Randolph. But I think my conclusion on this is that because her products were sold to black women, she was supported financially, economically by the black community. She didn't owe anything to outside that community, and so she could make alliances with each one of these leaders based on the parts of their argument that she could support.
And another argument that was going on during that time, and I was just wondering where she fell on this one as well. So we oftentimes hear conversations about that early 1900s and everything about that was the time that, as you mentioned earlier, women were getting the right to vote. They would get the right to vote and being involved in the right to vote. And also at that same time, we had, the African American struggle. So there's always been that pivoting of the African American movement versus the women's movement, and some of the African American women being in the middle of that. So did she have dealings with like the Susan B. Anthony's and the people of that nature that were in the white women's movement? And also, what was her reaction to folks who were trying to pull the two apart?
Well, she was, she definitely was very conscious of the suffrage movement. In fact, I just found a little nugget where she was hosting a meeting in Indianapolis of a group of African American women who were supporting suffrage. She wasn't a leader in that movement, but as a member of the National Association of Colored Women, which very much was pushing for the right of women to vote, she had many friends like Adela Logan who were involved in that. So she was supportive of it, but she, definitely the National Association of Colored Women was created, I think in 1892 or 1898, because the white women's organization were disrespectful and excluded them. So that struggle that began even then, it continues on now. We have to figure out ways to find alliances, but there are often these tensions and intersectionality.
Yeah, because I think we see those tensions in a lot of different groups. I think we have another guest I want to bring in as well very shortly. But I think that we have those tensions in a lot of things because I know that even in the Black Lives Matter movement and even in the New Poor People's Campaign, which I think Reverend Barber has done a great job of networking a lot of their lives.
Oh, he's fabulous. You are lucky to have him in North Carolina. What a fabulous man.
We're very fortunate to have him. And I like the way that he has created a lot of unity between groups that in the past have been standing against each other, because he makes it a very conscious effort to bring people in from the gay and lesbian community into the struggles that he has put together. He makes a very conscious effort to bring in the people from the Indian movement, which we have some Indian tribes here, and the Asian community and the Latin community and the different ethnicities, as well as the different, as you just said, the genders, the orientations, different things that people are involved in their struggles. He's made a very strong effort, just like I think Martin Luther King did, of trying to create unity among all the people. I mean, even among religious differences, because he's not afraid to bring a Jewish person or a Muslim person onto the same stage with him.
Yeah, well, as I wrap up so that your other guests can come in, and I have so enjoyed talking with you, but yes, we have to make alliances. That is what we are facing as we go into this midterm election. That is what we will face going forward in the next presidential elections. We cannot do it on our own. We have to find ways that we, have common cause with other people, and we have to break down these barriers, because the sort of racism and the white supremacy that basically wants to exclude all of us, Muslim, gay, lesbian, transgender, Mexicans, Latinos, African Americans, people of African descent, we have to find our common ground with each other.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. You do know that you're welcome to come back anytime, and we hope that as the series gets closer that you will come back and maybe even bring Octavia with you. Or, hey, we wouldn't even mind if you bring the party back with you. But we definitely have enjoyed the conversation, and anytime that you want to come back and share with us what you're doing, both in your own career as well as what you are learning about your family lineage, you're always welcome to be here on this show, and you've been a total joy to talk to.
Well, this has been a delight for me. I really appreciated your questions and learning something about what you're doing, so I look forward to coming back. Thank you so much.
No problem at all.
All right.
Appreciate it. So, Dee, do we have our other guests on?
Hey, we got Mr. Gabriel and Mr. Bradshaw at the door.
Oh, we got two guests. I appreciate it. We'll start off with Gabriel.
All right,
hey, Gabriel?
Here we go.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing, Mr. Godwin? I'm so glad that you are here with us and everything.
Thank you, sir.
I had reached out, Dean, to Mr. Godwin sometime back, but he was doing some traveling, and we're talking about building unity. Well, one of the things he's trying to do is build unity among our community, so I wanted to talk about that to some degree. But, you know, I've got several friends that are drivers for the car share programs that we are all familiar with, you know, Lyft, Uber, and things of that nature. But Gabriel is putting together one that is African-American owned. It's going to hopefully, you know, give them some very stiff competition, because I know even when my friends talk about it, one of their complaints is that they don't make as much money as they would like to make. And when I look at your model, I'm sitting there going like, well, good grief. I actually don't drive, so it wasn't immediate because I'm a mass transit person, as I've talked about on this show before. But my friends that drive and want to be drivers for you, you were talking about something radical. You were talking about like 85% going back to the drivers. I'm sitting there going like, this is unheard of.
Yeah, actually, we are actually thinking about even going further, 95% going back to the driver, because we can.
Wow.
And you know, we're very daring of a platform. We're very revolutionary to the industry, I would say, quite honestly. And I believe that we have a lot to prove, and we're going to give these big guys a run for their money.
Well, I definitely appreciate it. Now, tell me, now we've had Inclusive on, and I know part of the reason that Inclusive got involved in the industry of hospitality, because they were kind of like were a competitor to some of the hotel industries and things of that nature that are like house sharing opportunities.
Yes.
And part of their issue that they got involved, both of the partners that we had, because we had both Rohan on as well as Zakia on, was that they had, I think both, if not, I know one did for sure, and I think both of them had run into issues where they ran into the racism in the industry. So I was wondering, what got you into the industry? Was it something that you saw, some of the racism that might exist in the industry, or what pushed you to decide that you wanted to create moving as a competitor to those big guys, as we just call them?
Well, I know that there's a little bit of injustice going on in this particular industry, and we were talking about even just to begin with the driver. The driver is not compensated well. We all know that, and even as consumers, at least conscious consumers, will know that, man, when you get that $5 fare or $3 fare, you know that not a whole lot goes back to the driver. And but of course, you know, the market's out there. But more so, I think the drivers are more willing to work and be out there. But you know, treat them fairly, let their voices be heard, and you know, because at the end of the day, models like ours, and particularly rideshare, it's not the company that owns the cars; it's the driver that is willing to go out there day in and day out to make, you know, to facilitate this service. So, you know, we felt like we needed to harmonize this particular space, and there was an opportunity. Drivers, wherever I was going, were always constantly complaining, and some actually likened it, and to date, they say that it's equivalent to like almost borderline slave labor, whereas you feel like you're held. It's like, you know, the companies that, you know, you're at the company's mercy based on their policies, et cetera, and you might have heard about lawsuits, et cetera, or mistreatment of drivers. And I think we saw an opportunity, and we've continuously built upon putting the driver first, and that actually is ingrained in our company's philosophy of putting the driver first. And we believe that actually by doing so, you know, they'll go the extra mile for our customers. So, you know, we've done that through and through in all the markets that we've continue to expand into, and you know, it's the same pretty much philosophy that is applied to all across. And we've been, thankfully very successful at it.
So far, the company started in, if I remember correctly, it started in the Seattle area, in the Washington area. How many states are you currently in? Because I know that a lot of the other ones started in the West Coast now. They've now expanded to, like I said, I have friends here that are drivers for, I think, both Uber and Lyft, and there's a third company whose name is slipping me right now. But I know that they're drivers for those companies. But I was just wondering, how many of the 50 states are you in currently? And I think one of your other models, which is new to a lot of these companies, is that you're actually looking at even being involved because of your own ancestry in some of the what other people would consider third world or second world countries. Because I know that you've been looking, I believe you're from one of the African nations, so you've been looking at possibly even going into those countries and not just doing regular cars, but also rickshaws.
Correct. Yeah. So actually, I'm like day 2 back in the U.S. from summer-long business trip across Africa and the Middle East. Actually, literally, I'm just fresh off the plane. But we pushed across summers. We added 10 more cities. Now we're totaling up to 38 now cities around the world. A big base of our cities are here in the United States, of course. We're pushing a lot of mainly B2B partners. That's where we got our first break, and we've partnered in the likes of hotels, convention centers, and larger clients, B2B clients around major cities, Chicago, LA, New York City, San Francisco, et cetera. And now I think that we have matured. Part of the whole idea to go outside and to Africa is where I'm originally from, but I grew up here, and I align with very much everything that's out here. I'm more so, I saw an opportunity, one, to bridge the technological gap between the African continent and the U.S., of course. I saw an opportunity, the fact that there's a huge and growing population of mobile adoption in the African continent, actually surpassing that of the Western world, if you can believe that. Lots of folks have mobile smartphones, but they lack the mobile services and what we've come to enjoy out here. But I felt like also too, for the most part, that it was a calling of sort and a way to give back, and more so to bridge our kinfolk between African Americans in Africa, because I align and I identify as an African and American, but African American as well. But I felt like there was a huge need to be able, for the first time, be able to bridge that connection, saying what we're doing out there for and uplifting the continent of Africa and aligning our kinship, and as well as also here in the U.S. and as well as bringing rideshare to the urban populations. And you probably might have heard about discrimination happening in some larger cities, where Lyft drivers were not honoring ride requests from mostly inner city neighborhoods and largely African American. So I feel like we came and answered that. And I believe that we also out here as flag bearers to a lot of kids out here in the U.S., young African American women and men that say, hey man, here's a brother out here, who's jumped into technology. I can do the same thing too. So mostly, as I said, it's inspirational all across, and whether we translate, whether here in the communities out here or in the continent of Africa. And I think we have a lot to show, and I think we have a lot to bridge, and we're just getting started.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Now, one of the things that I've always been fascinated by, and we've actually talked about it, I think, last week with our guest, when we were talking about black farming, and definitely, I think, last week and the week before when we were talking about entrepreneurship, is that there's this kind of conversation that's going on where I want to say maybe in the 60s, definitely during kind of the Black Power movement, we heard a lot of people trying to make that connection between African Americans and the brothers that are still in Africa, and a lot of them are still doing business. But I do know that over the last 2 decades or whatever, there's been apparently like a division among both the African in the Africa community and the African American, as well as even the Caribbean. So it seems to me that we are now starting to see a push again to try to unify all of the African diaspora and try to get us to understand that, we need to have a model similar to what some of the other cultures have done. I mean, South Koreans, they have Koreatown, or China, they have Chinatown, but they also have dealings with actual Korea and, one of the two Koreas and actual China, or we can use all kinds of examples like that. I mean, same with India and some of the other countries. But we, as a past, have not always done that. We have African stores that may pop up in some of our community, and we may patronize those stores because we like their clothes style, and we may even patronize some of the African merchandise that is in our community. But I don't know that we're necessarily doing outside of that a lot of strong business development of connecting the businesses. Is that what you have